generation destroyed, devoid of conviction, conflicted, annoyed, kicked at and worn down six.
One about war stories, the war stories of my family, my grandma's family in Norway during World War II. In 1940, they were invaded by the Germans. To be exact, the 8th and the 9th of April in 1940. And the only reason I remember that is last time I was in Norway, which was in 2006, I think it was, in April, and the day I left was April 8th. My grandma happened to tell me, "Oh, do you know what day it is?" And I said, "Well, I have no idea." And she said, "Oh, today is the day that Norway was invaded." And that was kind of interesting for me, so I asked her, did she remember that? And apparently she was 6 years old, and it was actually her first day of school, April 8th, and she remembers getting up and being all excited and being ready to go to school, and going outside and looking up in the sky and seeing a plane, a warplane, crash, crash from the sky, and realizing that there wasn't going to be school today, that school was out on account of war. Those were pretty lean times. They had, much like a lot of other countries at war, of course, they had food rations, and things were pretty slim. And my great aunt, I was talking to her the other day, and she was saying it took her a long time to like mashed potatoes again, because during the war they would eat kind of this potato soup that was cheap but kind of gross, and that mashed potatoes would remind her of that, and that it was something she did not like on account of that. So my grandma and her sister were both quite young during the war, or the sister that didn't like potatoes, but her oldest sister was old enough to get involved with the Nazi officer, which was really troubling because the oldest brother, who was older than the oldest sister, was part of the resistance, or the underground movement. He ran a printing press out of their attic and would distribute a underground paper with whatever information they could get about the Germans, and for purpose of sabotage or whatever. And it was very dangerous for him. Because when the printing press was running in the attic, it would take quite a bit of electricity, and it would make the lights in the house flicker, which would have been a giveaway for the Nazi officers or whoever, who, if they would have found him, would have probably shot him on sight, or at least sent him off to prison for the rest of the war or whatever. And so you can imagine how bad it was then for the family when they found out that the oldest sister was having a baby with that she was pregnant with this Nazi's child. See, what happened, or the way I heard the story anyway, not from her but from my grandpa, was that she had some kind of cute romantic encounter at the post office, where she'd gone and she dropped all her stuff everywhere, and this nice young officer had helped her pick up her stuff, and she got in a conversation. He said, "Hey, do you want to go for coffee sometime?" And they went out for coffee, and he kind of told her that he wished he didn't have to be in the army, and this and that, and poor guy. And one thing led to another, and all of a sudden, there you go, she's having a baby. And so after the occupation, obviously that didn't go over very well. She was seen as a traitor against her country. She was literally in bed with the enemy, and it was this baby. And so when Walter, the officer, or not an officer, the soldier, was sent back to Germany, she was sent out too. They were kept in kind of an internment camp, actually. The women who had been involved with Nazi soldiers. And then she was sent in the hull of a freight ship back to be with him in Germany. And they lived in München, in Munich, which had been bombed. And they lived in the basement of a bombed-out house. So the upstairs, everything above ground, was just a shell, was bombed out, and they lived in this basement. And they cooked over a fire in a little can, and it was apparently very slim times. So much so that in fact, she would go out at night and steal turnips to feed her baby, which was something for years later that she was very ashamed of that she had to do. And back then, I mean, turnips weren't even considered really people food. That was like horse feed. But they made it through the slim times, and eventually relatives in America sponsored them to come over to the States. But they were still estranged from her Norwegian family. And after many, many years, there was made some efforts to reconcile, and they got together again, and it was great and whatnot. But it was still kind of awkward with her husband, because he still would kind of sounded like he was pretty sympathetic to Hitler, and he would say things like, if only Hitler would have been given a chance, he would have done great things, or if they would have let him finish or whatever. And so obviously that doesn't go over very well. That's Hitler does not get Hitler. People who sympathize with Hitler don't go over very well. He's dead now, actually. The Hitler, yes, but Walter is dead, and his wife now lives in the United States. Apparently, a very lovely woman. But that is the story of my grandma's family during the war. And my grandpa probably would have been 13, and I don't know what his story is. I have to ask him. But he would have been too young to have been involved with any military stuff, but old enough to at least remember. So I'll have to ask him. But that's that for now.
57, 1957. The pen keeps moving in attempt to sink the jingos. Fight 'em with hula hoops, frisbees and pink flamingos. Up running all night, late sleep ordered. Have gun, will travel greatly forward. Man on a corner with dark glasses.